Pakistan army is an insurgent army, cannot defeat India conventionally. Once things have returned to some degree of normalcy, there's going to be another terrorist attack, and we're going to find ourselves right back where we are. India wants to deter Pakistan. So if you're an insurgent army, it's really easy to prove that you weren't deterred, and that is by launching a terrorist attack. And so it is in the existential makeup of the Pakistan army that it not be deterred by India. And the only way that it has to show that is to conduct episodic terrorist attacks.
Good evening, viewers. We at Indian Express are going to tell you all about ceasefire, how it was done, and how now it's being violated. Barely just few hours after the ceasefire was announced by both the countries, India and Pakistan, it's violated. Drones are seen all over in Srinagar. We need to understand that why Pakistan is now doing whatever it's doing. I'm joined by renowned American scholar ChristineFair, who is an expert in security affairs in Georgetown University in Washington, D.C. She understands Pakistan, she understands Taliban, she understands diplomacy and the relationship between both India and Pakistan. Welcome, Christine, to Indian Express. We would like to know, now that the ceasefire has been violated, are you surprised?
So you're at an informational advantage relative to me because I've actually been on other meetings all morning, and so this is the first time I'm aware that the ceasefire has been violated. I
Hmm.
was a little bit dubious about the ceasefire for
Hmm.
a number of reasons. India denied that Donald Trump had actually facilitated the ceasefire. So I, what's the word I'm looking for? I've been very skeptical of the ceasefire.
Hmm.
And so I'm not surprised, but I wasn't aware that the ceasefire had already been violated by Pakistan.
Yeah, the chief minister of Jammu and Kashmir, he just tweeted also that, in fact, I'll just read out his tweet to you. This is no ceasefire. The air defense units in the middle of Srinagar just opened up, and he's, tagged a video also in which the drones can be seen, and the interceptors can quite be seen, how the airspace is again being violated by Pakistan. So as I was asking you, whether you are surprised or not, in last like 3 hours only they violated the ceasefire, and this time the US had mediated. Do you think that it does not hold any good with Pakistan, that whosoever is mediating, because we were learning that Saudi Arabia was also mediating between India and
Yeah.
Pakistan?
I mean, so honestly, I'm I really don't know because Trump is such an unreliable narrator. I
Hmm.
don't know the extent to which President Trump and JD Vance was involved.
Hmm.
Their own personal statements belie that, but what we do know is that Marco Rubio had been very much involved in
Hmm.
dealing with both sides. But I had suspected that Saudi Arabia might be a country that would actually have more gravitas with both India and Pakistan. The United States, particularly the Trump administration, and I mean, I shouldn't say that. It's had some outreaches to the Pakistan government. But ever since the withdrawal of the United States from Afghanistan, the U.S. has had a pretty standoff relationship with the Pakistanis. So Saudi Arabia struck me as a more sensible interlocutor than the United States. So no, I'm not surprised by that feature at all.
So now that the ceasefire has been violated, where do you see situation from here going on? Will it be escalated further? Because next DGMO meeting was supposed to be taking place on May 12th, that is 1200 hours. So now the
Yeah.
ceasefire has already been violated. From now, where to now?
I don't know. The ball is in India's court. I don't. So I'm not surprised that there'll be these fringe violations of the ceasefire. It doesn't mean that the ceasefire is simply going to blow up. I just don't have enough information. And ultimately, the ball is in India's court on how it's going to respond to these. Now, the reason why I'm also being very, very cagey is the Indian media has been a massive source of disinformation. So
Yes.
I've been very wary of trusting anything coming out of either capitals. The Pakistani media has been actually more restrained And that's because it's been so harassed, so harangued, so suppressed by the army that you don't have this vibrant, vocal media in Pakistan that you used to have. So it's been really difficult as an American who's not in the region right now. If I went by the Indian media, if I went by Arnab Goswami, India is already occupying Karachi. So it's hard for me to find ways of discerning what's credible and what's not.
Just few hours back there was a briefing by Indian Army also, in which they had said that they are going to abide by the ceasefire,
Hmm.
but they are still fully prepared. They also said that any misadventure by Pakistan would be dealt accordingly. So
Hmm.
now, as you were also saying, that the ball is with India, that how do they respond? But what do you assess that things from here are going to escalate, because both the countries are nuclear countries?
So my sense has been both sides wanted a way to de-escalate, but there wasn't an obvious off-ramp.
Hmm.
So I don't think that because both countries are nuclear, I don't think either country wants this country
Hmm.
doesn't want this conflict to continue escalating up the escalation ladder.
Hmm.
So I don't I can say very cautiously that I suspect that in very broadest of terms, the ceasefire will hold because I don't think either India or Pakistan have an incentive for a wider conflict to develop.
What do you have to say about Pakistani army? Because I was listening to most of your speeches in which you had called them an insurgent organization.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So I mean, here's the sad thing, right? And I'm actually writing a piece. I'm doing a lot of writing over the weekend, um, sort of making this argument. Here's the really sad thing is that no matter how scary this particular crisis was, it was unprecedented. It was much more aggressive than the Pulwama slash Balakot
Yes.
scenario for a variety of reasons, namely India's strike in the Punjab, which was going to provoke a
Hmm.
Pakistani response. There was no way that a
Hmm.
response was not going to be forthcoming. But here is the tragedy. Once things have returned to some degree of normalcy, there's going to be another terrorist attack, and we're going to find ourselves right back where we are, except India is going to have to be more outrageous than it has been during this because it has to up the ante, which means that the next crisis slide that we're going to be in is going to be ever more dangerous. And the reason for this is I believe the Pakistan army is an insurgent army cannot defeat India conventionally, nor can India defeat Pakistan in a short conventional war either, because along the international border in the LOC, both forces are evenly distributed. India's advantages only come into play over the course of a long war, which is pretty much ruled out by nuclear weapons. So Pakistan's main goal is to show that it has not been deterred by India, right? India wants to deter Pakistan. So if you're an insurgent army, it's really easy to prove that you weren't deterred, and that is by launching a terrorist attack. And so it is in the existential makeup of the Pakistan army that it not be deterred by India. And the only way that it has to show that is to conduct episodic terrorist attacks. So maybe it'll be 4 years, maybe it'll be 5 years, maybe it'll be two, but it's going to happen again.
Which is very sad, which is very sad. Even India, had this kind of an intel, because the foreign secretary himself said that India carried out these retaliatory actions, this Operation Sindoor, only after Pahalgam. And India had intelligence saying that Pakistan was going to indulge in these sorts of attacks again. And now that you're also mentioning that, there is a possibility. So, what do you feel? Because you know both the regions quite well, do you feel that this kind of an attack is going to take place in Kashmir, and or maybe in the hinterland?
So, I mean, it's hard to say. There hasn't really been an egregious by, I
Hmm.
mean, I'm talking about, of course, the November 2008 attacks. We haven't seen anything quite like that in India since then. So it's coming up on what, I don't know, 16 years. I can't do math right now. 16, 17 years. Um, so I don't think that Pakistan is going to make that provocation again. I mean, this doesn't mean that there won't be Pakistan-sponsored attacks in India, but I don't think we're going to see I don't think we're going to see a Mumbai again, right? The environment is too dangerous. India has made really important steps in revolution and military affairs, right? It's developed and it's inducted new weapon systems that give it new capabilities, but so has Pakistan. Pakistan doesn't have any capabilities because it has demonstrated that it has capabilities.
Mm,
And so what I would like to believe would come out of this crisis is some lessons learned on both sides about what red lines are. But
mm.
just as neither side learned the lessons of Pawama, if we did, we wouldn't be in this crisis today. I don't think the lessons of this crisis are going to be thoroughly learned. I think both sides live in an echo chamber. Both sides like to tell themselves that they won, that they had their pound of flesh. And this actually precludes them from looking very carefully at actually what happened on the ground. So I'm very confident there's going to be another attack. I'm also very confident that the escalation of the crisis that's going to emerge from it is going to be far more dangerous than the crisis that we've just witnessed.
Since you know Pakistan so well, as you mentioned about Pakistani army, what about its generals? General Munir, a lot is said about him. Give us a sense,
Yeah.
like how his mindset is, the present setup of army's mindset is in Pakistan vis-a-vis India.
Well, yeah, I mean it's actually really straightforward, right? For the Pakistani state, Pakistan is not complete without Kashmir, right?
Mm,
This is and by the way, a lot of hay was made about Munir's speech about Kashmir being the jugular vein of Pakistan. The people who were making hay about that, it showed their ignorance because every single army chief has said this,
yeah,
and so has every single prime minister, right? This is boilerplate for quite some time, but this is a narrative that has been rehearsed throughout Pakistan's entire existence. So Pakistan can't take Kashmir by force. It can't do that. But what Pakistan is capable of doing is making sure that India can't claim that there's complete peace in the valley. So, I was last in Kashmir 2 years ago. I did a very extensive trip. I also think the criticisms of the Indian security forces are really misplaced. Some people are saying, this was a huge intelligence lapse. It was this lapse, and that lapse. There's a very robust counterinsurgency grid in place in Kashmir, but you
mm,
can't prevent every terrorist attack, right? That's why it's such an effective tool, is that no matter how, and then what happens, of course, is that this will force India to put a more oppressive counterinsurgency grid in place, further alienating the local
local,
population.
yeah.
Right. So this is very easy and this is one of the ways that Pakistan wins, quite frankly, is by
Mm,
having this continuing discontent amongst Kashmiris for the Indian state.
mm.
And it knows this. If it actually cared about Kashmiris, which I have argued repeatedly, it does not, it would stop supporting terrorism and let Kashmiris have a quality of life that other citizens enjoy, right? But Pakistan doesn't care about Kashmiris. It cares about uh, making sure that India can't claim victory in Kashmir.
I was also there because I'm from Jammu and Kashmir, and I was there
Hmm.
for to cover elections. I was there for almost a month. So I traveled to all these far-flung areas.
So
So,
you saw this, you
mm,
saw the counterinsurgency grid, right? You
yes, yes.
saw the CRPF. They're all over the place.
Mm,
You
mm.
can't fault the Indians on
Mm.
this.
The police and the security grid officials used to tell me that the number of locals participating in terrorism now is coming down. But the kind of situation we saw after this attack, the way the houses were demolished in Kashmir, do you think that kind of anger will again turn into alienation? Will again turn into some kind of a hardcore sentiment?
I mean, I think it will. And Pakistan banks on it. And quite frankly, there's nothing else India can do, right? India is in a lose-lose situation, right? As long as and until Pakistan is dedicated to making sure that there is trouble in the valley for its strategic purposes, there will be trouble in the valley. So when I was there, Kashmiris told me look, they didn't like the oppression, right? But they did like the fact that there was security and then therefore there was a return to tourism, right? Because that's all they have to live off of is tourism. So the Kashmiris might not like the restrictions on their freedom, but what they got in return was economic, more greater economic prosperity.
Mm.
So it's a trade-off because when there's insecurity, the tourists don't come and the tourists don't bring the money.
Absolutely,
So yeah, it's a difficult trade-off.
absolutely. When we talk about economics, what about Pakistan economics? Yesterday only there was this IMF meeting in which again a package was rolled out at them. Please make us understand the dynamics of the equation between America, Pakistan, and IMF.
Well, by the way, India abstained on the IMF vote, if I understand
Yeah,
correctly. So one
yeah.
has to ask why India abstained.
Mm,
Was India trying to signal some willingness for a de-escalation off-ramp? I don't know, but I thought that
yeah.
was weird that India had abstained.
Mm,
So, I mean, so here's the thing. I think I lost track of the number. I think Pakistan has had 25 IMF bailouts. There or abouts. It's never honored any of its commitments in entirety. So it's a kabuki theater, right?
mm,
Pakistan withdraws at the last stage of the IMF agreement. It flounders for several years, and then it goes back to the IMF. And the reason is that Pakistan's economics are not sound. And the Pakistan army is the biggest hog of resources. And
mm,
so the world is just too afraid of Pakistan being too dangerous to fail. And that's why Pakistan continues to get these IMF bailouts. It's why Pakistan was never put on the blacklist of the FATF as it deserved to be. Because if it were on the blacklist, then it would not get the IMF bailouts. So this is basically what you infer from this is that the world thinks that Pakistan is too dangerous to fail.
mm. I was also listening to your thoughts on the National Security Advisor, Mr. Ajit Doval. That
That's a really old video. That's a very old video. I
so
was
has
shocked
the
that it was.
sentiment changed and recently, like now, because he was again in the center of everything as vis-a-vis the relations between Pakistan, India, Saudi Arabia, US of A. So, what do you have to say about him, the way he operates and the way he is being juggling things?
So look, I think, I mean, I'm not in a position to judge, right? I mean, there have been times when he's been frankly very disappointing.
Hmm.
But with respect to this particular sequence of attacks in the Punjab, you know, um, I thought they were unnecessarily provocative. And also they didn't really accomplish the aims that India or that Indians think it's accomplishing. And the reason for this is quite simple. Those institutions can be rebuilt. I mean, I applaud them for what they were, but I think with some hindsight, one should really reflect what was the cost benefit analysis of those strikes. It certainly ensured a response from Pakistan. And it doesn't meaningfully over time degrade the ability of Jaish or Lashkar-e-Taiba to perpetrate terrorism. Now, as an American, I want to make it really clear that we've been in a very similar situation for a very long time, right? We were targeting things, and we were using million per munition to target a friggin' tent. I mean, in Afghanistan, the munition was more expensive than the asset that we targeted, and the assets themselves were not something that would meaningfully degrade the capabilities of our adversary. So I'm not criticizing India. I'm just recognizing the predicament that it's in. Um, and this kind of speaks to a larger point that I'd like to make is that no matter how provocative or precise these targets, this targeting was, it doesn't change Pakistan's strategic calculus. And it
Hmm.
doesn't permanently degrade the ability of these groups to operate.
Hmm.
The only thing that can permanently change Pakistan's calculus and to persuade Pakistan to dismantle its petting zoos of terrorists is concerted international pressure along the lines of crippling sanctions. And that's never going to happen because the world is just too dangerous of what a failed Pakistan is going to look like. And so, unfortunately, this creates a situation for India that's very unenviable.
Hmm. See, when you talk about targets, whether it's Murid Ke, Bhavalpur, or Kotli, or Sialkot, these are very, important locations. You also have written so much about them. You have written about Lashkar, you have written about Jaish. Please make us understand that how these places, how they had hold up so many terrorists under the shelter of Pakistan. Pakistan was giving them quite a shelter, a sheltered umbrella. They were protecting them, in fact.
Well, I mean, I don't need to say anything else. You just said it, right? I mean, Bawalpur has been the redoubt of Jaish-e-Mohammed. Many of Masood Azhar's family died in the attacks. Masood Azhar himself was not, because he's probably being protected in Rawalpindi. The
Hmm.
first thing that probably happened after Pahalgam was that they moved Hafiz Saeed I
Maulana
just blanked
Masood
out his
Azhar. Hmm.
Masood
Masood
Azhar
Azhar.
to
Hmm.
Rawalpindi or Islamabad into safe houses.
Hmm.
That's
Hmm.
probably the first things that they did.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
we didn't get the leadership. I mean,
Hmm.
I've advocated in my own book for targeted leadership decapitation,
Hmm.
particularly for Lashkar-e-Taiba, because it's a very vertical organization without a lot of depth. And so it's not clear who would replace Hafiz Saeed, because he plays such an oversized role in the organization. So,
Hmm.
from my point of view, what would have been more effective was targeted covert operations to assassinate these leaders rather than provocatively bombing their their infrastructure, which can be readily rebuilt.
Hmm.
However, such target assassinations don't make Modi look like the tough guy. So if you're looking for electoral optics, bombing the Punjab is much more impressive than the hard work of covert operations to take out the leadership of these organizations, which would have a much more impactful role on their ability to conduct terror operations.
So you're of a viewpoint that nothing is basically strategically going to change vis-a-
Correct.
vis-a-vis India, Pakistan, or the way terror has been exported from Pakistan for last 2.5 decades.
Well, it's actually been longer than that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Because I've been covering it for 2.5 decades. Yeah.
Yes, it's been much longer than that. I mean,
Yeah,
this in
yeah.
some way, in some sense, Pakistan's been doing this since 1947.
Yes.
Um, and it works for Pakistan. You see, that's what a lot of people don't understand is that from the Pakistani point of view, it works for them.
Hmm. So again, we go back to mediation. Who do you feel played a crucial role to broker this deal, even if the deal only lasted for a few hours?
So I look, I don't like speaking about things with which I'm not familiar. I am very skeptical of Trump's claims.
Hmm.
I'm very skeptical. I
Hmm.
know Marco Rubio had been involved, but
Hmm.
I'm fairly confident that Saudi Arabia was definitely played an important role.
Hmm.
The extent to which President Trump played a role, I don't know. So I don't want to comment about things that I don't. I mean, the ceasefire just happened a few hours ago,
Hmm.
and I'm still working my way through to see what's credible and what's not. And I
Hmm.
don't want to comment upon things that I don't repose confidence in.
So, last question. How do you, I mean, hopefully, even if it's been violated for a few minutes or few hours, hopefully it will go through, because next 48 hours are going to be very crucial, because the next DGMO meeting is at on May 12th, 1200 hours. What do you have to, give a point, keeping in mind everything which has happened in last 20 days as an advice to both India and Pakistan?
I mean, I don't play that role. I'm
Hmm.
sorry. I mean, I'm not a Pakistani. I'm not an Indian. That's not my place.
as
I
as an
what I will
observer, independent
as an
observer.
as an independent observer, I hope that despite these fringe violations, that the ceasefire is going to hold. That's what I hope for.
Hmm. Even we hope that, because in the end it's the common man which suffers all along the LOC international border in both the countries, because they are the ones who are bearing the brunt and losing their lives, and losing their precious things. Houses are being damaged. In fact, interestingly, even India was saying that Pakistan was targeting the religious places, whether it's churches, temples, or gurdwaras. Do you
Yeah,
think this was a thought of action which the Pakistan was taking?
no, I
No.
don't.
Hmm.
I don't even know. No, I don't even know if I believe that to be true. So,
Okay.
so I'm not going to comment
Hmm.
again upon something that I'm not sure if it's credible. Yeah, there's just look, the Indian press needs to be held accountable
Hmm.
for making itself so unreliable.
Hmm.
Many of us are just like, who is a reliable interlocutor in this?
Hmm.
Unfortunately, the Indian press is not going to be held accountable because it's good for ratings. It's good for ratings, but in terms of making an informed public, it's a disaster.
Thankfully, we at Indian Express have been only putting out all sorts of verified news. We have been, keeping the news with us only after verifying, counter verifying, only then have been putting it out. Hopefully, you don't have this grudge with us. Thank you so much for talking to us. It was a pleasure speaking to
Thank
you.
you. All right, have a
Namaste.
fabulous evening.
Thank
Namaste.
you. Thank you. Thank you.